Europe is now going after YouTube creators. New rules could give traditional broadcasters a stronger position on platforms like YouTube, while independent creators are quietly pushed lower in the algorithm. The oil market is shaking too, after the United Arab Emirates officially left OPEC and OPEC Plus after 59 years. And while the Gulf is under pressure, Turkey is trying to pull capital away from Dubai with up to 20 years of tax exemptions for foreign money. So today we looked at YouTube, oil and money and how the old rules are starting to break. If you like this video useful, leave a like, it really helps this channel grow. Curious? Let's break it down. OPEC has lost its third largest oil producer. This is the biggest blow to the OPEC group in decades. The United Arab Emirates, the third largest producer, has started to play solo and has left the cartel after 59 years of memberships. And this means that if one more player follows them, the organizations that has controlled global oil prices and oil supply since 1960 may stop existing in its current form. And interestingly, there is a real chance of that happening. But let's start from the beginning. OPEC is a very important group of oil-producing countries which for decades has kept global barrel prices under control. The members set daily oil production levels to keep prices at certain levels and to avoid hurting each other. But this old order is now starting to fall apart. The United Arab Emirates officially left OPEC and OPEC Plus on May 1st, 2026. And what is important, this decision was made without consulting any regional ally. So the question is, what happened that pushed the Emirates into such a dynamic move? Let's go back to April 27th, when at the Gulf Influencers Forum in Dubai, the diplomatic advisor Angar Garash spoke publicly. In 2000, we signed a joint defense pact. But in the end, we found out that when it comes to the position of the Gulf Cooperation Council countries, yes, logistically, these countries supported each other. But from a political and military point of view, their position was, in my opinion, the weakest in history. I expect such a weak position from the Arab League, and that does not surprise me. But I do not accept it from Cooperation Council, and I am surprised by it. To put it simply, the Emirates felt betrayed. In 2000, they signed the Gulf Cooperation Council Defense Pact with the Saudis, with a clause similar to NATO's Article 5. In simple terms, an attack on one member was supposed to mean an attack on all members. As we know, nothing like that happened. Just 5 years ago, the United Arab Emirates was the Saudis' most loyal regional partner. Together, they isolated Qatar in 2017. They fought in Yemen. They blocked the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. And now, their paths are clearly moving into different directions. Everything between these two started falling apart back in 2016 when Russia joined OPEC Plus, and the Saudis started playing on the same side as Putin more often than the Emirates. In the first week of the war, Iran sent 165 ballistic missiles and 541 drones toward the territory of the United Arab Emirates. At the same time, the Saudis did not even cut their diplomatic channel with Iran. So the United Arab Emirates sent the bill, and that bill is, we are leaving OPEC. Here is worth listening to the United Arab Emirates Energy Minister himself. This is a political decision. It was made after a careful analysis of current and future policy regarding production levels. He repeated the same formula for CNN and The National. But why? In this way, they sent a signal to the Saudis that this is not really a dispute over production limits to the markets. They sent a signal that there is no supply panic. And to the United States, they sent the signal that they are playing on Trump's side, not OPEC's side. Just look at the timing of this event. Everything is happening during the war with Iran and while the Strait of Hormuz is closed. After leaving OPEC and after Hormuz reopens, the Emirates will be able to increase their exports faster, without the formal limits of the cartel pushed mainly by Saudi Arabia. The United Arab Emirates will be able to play its own independent game. With this move, Abu Dhabi is telling Riyadh that it no longer needs it, not militarily and not economically. But Saudi Arabia is not the only audience for this decision. Donald Trump, the 47th President of the United States, has been accusing OPEC of artificially pushing up the oil prices since his first term. During the war he is waging against Iran, he received a dream gift, a broken cartel whose actions he had criticized many times before. Reuters described this as a major victory for him. The United States currently has control over Venezuela now. We have a weakened cartel and Abu Dhabi outside OPEC control. This gives a United States more ability to influence oil prices. Trump himself also stressed that this is great news. The United Arab Emirates has withdrawn from OPEC. What do you think about that? I think it's a great news. I know him very well, Mohammed. Very smart man. He probably wants to go his own way. That's good. That's good for lowering gasoline and oil prices. And that is exactly how it looks right now. Venezuela may turn out to the dark horse in this race and the final nail in the cartel's coffin. So what does that mean for oil prices? OPEC has just lost its third largest producer, Saudi Arabia remaining the only player with real spare capacity, and the OPEC mechanism is losing its effectiveness. In the short term, nothing major will really change. The blockade of Hormuz is still the key short-term factor keeping pressure on the oil market. But when the route finally opens, the market will start pricing in extra supply and weaker discipline across the whole group. So is this the beginning of the end for OPEC? This structure is probably heading for major changes. When the route through Hormuz finally opens, Saudi Arabia will have to carry the whole burden of discipline by itself. It may try to repeat what happened back in 2014, flood the market with cheap barrels to force the rest into obedience. But this time, the United Arab Emirates is much better prepared. OPEC will obviously not disappear from the world map overnight, but it may become what it has been threatening to become for several years now, a loose consultation forum, not an effective cartel. Let me know what do you think in the comments. Turkey is pulling capital away from Dubai. Is Ankara becoming a new tax haven? As they say, when two sides are fighting, the third one benefits. While the world is being hit by the fallout from the blockade of Strait of Hormuz, Turkey President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has sensed a good business opportunity and decided to launch a tax bomb. For the next 20 years, 100% of profits made inside the Istanbul financial center and 95% of profits made outside it could be deducted from the corporate income tax base. This is not the only tax break announced by the Turkish president. The wider program called Strong Center for Investments, it's supposed to make Istanbul a real competitor, and it is also aimed at private individuals, people living abroad who have not been taxpayers in Turkey during the last 3 years would not pay tax on foreign income and foreign gains for 20 years after moving to the country. So what is the goal of this move? Turkey plans to take over some of the wealthy clients from the Gulf countries, especially so-called digital nomads and regional company headquarters. Erdogan is openly positioning Istanbul as an alternative, especially to Dubai, considering the current geopolitical situation and tensions in the region. For multinational companies, apart from the possible 100% exemptions, there could also be a 9% corporate tax for exporters and producers, as well as tax breaks for transit trade. They are really big concessions from a country like Turkey. As they say, nothing to do but take it. So how we should understand Erdogan's declaration? The Turkish president wants to use the moment of weakness in the Gulf countries and present Turkey as an economically stable country, an alternative for international capital. Despite all the pessimistic scenarios and smear campaigns, we have gone from an economy worth $238 billion to an economy worth $1.6 trillion today. Everyone who follows global economy and politics can see this very clearly. The world is no longer the same world. And honestly, it is hard to disagree with that statement. It looks like Erdogan understood this better than many other politicians. The project still has to go to parliament in the coming weeks, but the president's party has a majority there, so it will probably pass. Government media are presenting it a very good plan, but what will actually come out of these declarations? Only time will tell. It depends mainly on whether the offer finds the right audience. Dubai has its problems right now, and part of the capital may definitely look at Turkey more positively. But there are also serious arguments against moving capital into this country. First of all, high inflation. In recent months, inflation has been lower than usual, but it is still above 50% year over year. It is hard to talk about a stable economy in a country where the local lira is worth just over 2 cents against the dollar. Besides, tax incentives alone may not be enough. A particular barrier may be the difficulty of getting long-term residence in Turkey, unless that also changes soon. At the moment, to receive parliament residence, you need to live in Turkey for 8 years. You also need a clean criminal record, you cannot use social assistance, and you need to have a permanent place of residence. And the reality is that even small inconsistencies can lead into rejections of an application. What's more, a property bought for living in Turkey must have a specific value. Right now, its minimum value is $200,000. So what does this mean? It is hard to get long-term residence in Turkey, but for wealthy people, it will probably be much easier. And that is exactly the point for Erdogan. With this offer, he wants to bring in people who gain a lot from tax-free residence. So what do you think? Can Turkey attract global capital and partly replace Dubai? Let me know in the comments. Is internet censorship getting closer? Controversial rules from the European Commission. My friends, you may want to sit down comfortably, because what European elites are quietly preparing could really shock you. And at the same time, the future of creators on platforms like this may be put into questions. But let's start from the beginning. The European Union, together with the United Kingdom, came up with a brilliant idea to increase the visibility of traditional television through legal regulations. What could this mean in practice? Imagine if you open YouTube, usually at the top you would see our episodes or episodes from other channels you actually like and watch. But this time, they are not there. Instead, you see public televisions use mainstream TV programs and productions from traditional broadcasters. Not because you search for them, not because they are the best videos available, but because the algorithm receives a top-down order. Of course, all of this is happening under the cover of promoting so-called reliable content first. Apparently, work on these rules has been ongoing for quite some time, but it is only now starting to come out. And in mainstream media, almost complete silence. But honestly, that is not surprising. Nobody wants to wake up a mass audience because naturally this is not in their interest. This is why I decided to talk about this issue, because the future of your favorite creators may unfortunately be at risk. And this is not some exaggerated fantasy or conspiracy theory. The issue was raised by the Director of Government Affairs and Public Policy for YouTube in Europe, David Wildon. He warned that these regulations could force YouTube to give special treatment to a small group of organizations selected by the government. Publishing privileged channels to the front of the line means that everybody else is pushed further back. No matter what viewers actually want to watch, this would make it harder for creators to build up an audience and make a living. If governments start choosing the winners, independent creators become the losers. It is worth pointing out here that the first rules favoring public media appeared in the United Kingdom with the Media Act in 2024. In short, the idea was to make sure that British public media such as BBC, ITV or Channel 4 do not disappear in a jungle of global giants like Netflix or Disney+. The law was supposed to guarantee that the apps of public broadcasters on smart TVs or TV boxes would always be easy to find. In the European Union, there is also the so-called European Media Freedom Act, which, among other things, protects media outlets from unfair moderation. In practice, this means that YouTube cannot simply remove, for example, a public broadcaster video from the platform just like that. Before making such a decision, the platform must notify the publisher within a specific reason, and the publisher then has 24 hours to respond. But it turns out that this may not only be the beginning of control over competition and speech on the internet. Much more dangerous ideas are already being discussed. One of them is introducing so-called prominence rules also on social media platforms, for example YouTube, TikTok or Facebook. How would this look in practice? The first places on the homepage or in search results would no longer be based mainly on your interest or your viewing history as they are now. Instead, content selected by the government could appear there. Exactly. The government would decide what we are supposed to watch. This would automatically push ordinary creators into the background. I do not think these changes would happen suddenly. As creators, we would probably not disappear from the platform overnight. But who knows if, step by step, we would not be pushed lower and lower in recommendations. I do not want to create unnecessary theories there, but government ideas about controlling what appears on our screens never sounds good. For independent creators, this means unfair competition with giants. Fewer views means lower income. Lower income means smaller budgets, smaller teams, and over time, lower quality content. That is what this all comes down to. These kinds of moves leads to the marginalizations of smaller players. In other words, what YouTube was originally created for, escaping from the huge television machines. Because then YouTube would slowly become a second television, and this process has already started and it's gaining speed. Creators may run their own studios, they hire writers, editors and camera operators, they create high quality content that entertains, educates and inspires billions of people around the world, often helping people understand Europe culture more deeply. And pushing independent creators into the shadows would happen through the law that ironically it's supposed to protect media pluralism and media independence. This kind of central control is simply the opposite of the basic principle of social media. And David Wildon also pointed this out. The European creator economy is a global success because of one simple rule. On YouTube, viewers decide what they want to watch. All creators have equal chances. Videos becomes popular, because they reach audiences, not because they were selected by some gatekeeper. And it is exactly this freedom of choice that caused a major shift of viewers away from traditional television and towards internet sources. But of course, when money is involved, many things become possible. And here we get to the second layer of this story, the failing influence of traditional television. Mainstream media are systematically losing viewers. For example, the BBC has lost more than £1.1 billion in a year in license-free income because viewers simply stopped paying it. 12.5% of households stopped paying the bill, and another 3.6 million declared they do not longer need television. In Germany, ARD is struggling with a similar drop of popularity. In France television depends heavily on public money. Does this change anything when it comes to the quality of content or reach? As we can see, not really. It is a similar black hole to many public budgets. No matter how much money is added, the same problems remain. According to the Ofcom Media Nations 2025 report, 43% of young British people start their day with a streaming service, 14% with YouTube, and only 7% with BBC iPlayer. These are hard numbers and they show one thing clearly. Traditional media are losing the battle for attention. And what does the mainstream do about it? Does it start making better content? Does it start presenting what is happening in the world more objectively? Not really. It goes directly to the regulators and asks for the rules to be rewritten. It moves the boundary little by little, operating where it did not exist before, and where it used to face real competition. If YouTube suddenly started banning creators, there would be a scandal across half of Europe. But if the algorithm quietly pushes down the list, almost nobody would notice except us. The only question is, what will they call it this time? Protection against disinformation? Pro-democratic optimization of recommendations? We will see what kind of words they use. But one thing is certain. It is worth making sure that creators and viewers knows about these ideas now.